Last time we decided to go over all of the ways that the MVM update could go wrong. Today we're gonna expand on those categories, giving Valve all the blueprints they need to make the MVM update a triumph. With just a little bit of effort and the barest amount of precaution, this has the potential to be the greatest update since Jungle Inferno, and I want to do my part in hopefully ensuring that Valve don't fall into the same traps that they've recently fallen into. A few weeks ago we were given a minor blog post stating that Valve got way more map submissions than they originally anticipated. Now, whether or not that shock came from ignorance of how vast Potato.tf's backlog actually is, or underestimating how many people would look at a 2-month deadline and take it as a challenge, we may never know. Regardless, they've got more work on their hands than they originally thought. So, how about we make it easier for them? Here's how Valve can make the perfect MVM update. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the most pertinent factor relating to the update. Maps. More specifically, their acquisition methods. We're all aware that in the year 2025, Valve isn't really known for the most rigorous filtering mechanisms for determining what maps get into the game. Usually it amounts to Eric skimming the first few pages of the workshop before eyeing up a couple of pretty thumbnails and calling it a day. Now, that doesn't mean the content is always bad. In fact, oftentimes it's very good. But it's undeniable that this lackadaisical approach to TF2's content curation can promote poor incentive structures that aren't conducive to the cream rising to the top. Chief among them being the increased emphasis on novelty as a star virtue. Be it gameplay or visuals, the mere appearance of innovation is what gains notoriety in the eyes of Valve. This is in stark contrast to what gains notoriety in the community MVM scene. Mappers go through multiple layers of playtesting, judging, and further design iterations, all to be included in a third-party campaign that can maybe crack 100 concurrent players on a good day. All for nothing but love of the game. Now, I ask you, as a TF2 player, if you had to blindly make a tour consisting of missions from either of these two domains, which one would you trust to have the best content available? Ideally, there wouldn't need to be a choice, and there's definitely some overlap between well-beloved community missions and what's at the tippy top of the workshop trending tab, but not as much as there really should be. A massive chunk of the most popular workshop maps began production no earlier than the date of the blog post announcement, and we can see that novelty effect at play, with new robot concepts, new tank models, and new aesthetic features being touted as worthwhile selling points to justify their inclusion. To be clear, I'm not shitting on workshoppers for doing this. Making the brochure a curiosity magnet is a part of the job, but there's simply no getting around the fact that many of these are 2-month-old maps created by people who have little to no experience in designing MVM missions. I played a lot of these more popular maps, and they're fine. Not amazing, not overwhelmingly terrible, just fine. But for a game mode that's had years upon years upon years of community-centric iteration, we can do a lot better than fine. Hell, a lot of the front page submissions don't even have a single mission bundled alongside them. You quite literally cannot playtest the maps. There is no greater indication that you cannot and should not build an update off of page 1 workshop submissions than that. Is it possible we get some good missions out of these maps? Sure, but why the fuck are we rolling the dice? Why not simply reach out to the people who have gone through the multi-year-long proving grounds of creating well-respected and widely adored community missions for, again, nothing but passion and personal fulfillment? The people who have maintained quality standards on par or even surpassing Valve's own original mission lineup, which has resulted in events like Potato.tf campaigns having the positive reputations that they do. This well-established quality standard is literally the reason why people like me were asking for a community update. The talent has already been curated, you just gotta harness it. The fact that Valve are referencing they have a mountain of shit to playtest could plausibly indicate they're aware of this, but you can never be too sure nowadays. Do they even have a team of 6 people ready to test them at the headquarters? I highly doubt it. I can't guarantee that Valve will change their selection criteria, but goddammit, I'm gonna work with the cards we're given and try to play the best hand we possibly can. So So I'm gonna drop some well-established, very palatable MVM maps that aren't just enjoyed by me, but MVM players of any status. New or old, veteran or noob, most people have a good time on these ones. You don't even have to take my word for it, just go play them on potato.tf if you're interested. Also, a quick addendum to my last video, while I do think a 6-mission tour would be a fine option, a lot of the submitted mission difficulties are actually relatively in line with their Valve counterparts. Due to this, we're probably in for a higher percentage of advanced community missions as opposed to intermediate ones, which does bump up the average completion time quite a bit. Based on that context, I think a 5-mission tour is the actual preferred sweet spot for a community MVM update. With that out of the way, here are some great contenders. First up, we have Sequoia. Definitely one of the more liked community MVM maps. Looks amazing, has a really expansive skybox, a lot of room to run around in without things feeling big just for the sake of being big. There's one gate on the map, and while it doesn't change the spawn point of the robots, it gives them a much quicker route to the bomb site if not properly defended. Because it's a larger map, you're able to beef up the robots and not get insta-dragged to the hatch, so there's a lot of potential for really interesting mission concepts here. After that, we have Underground. Probably my own personal favorite community MVM map. People might look at the singular cave entrance and think it's another big rock, and while they are thematically comparable, I think this one blows it out of the water. The front lines have 2 different spawn points, so you can't mindlessly turn your brain off unless you get flanked from the left. Outside of that, this map just has everything. Different levels of high ground, some more compact areas, some more open ones. The scale of the map is perfect. Even the background gives off an extremely isolated atmosphere. Almost every mission I've played on this map would be perfect additions to the game. This one is a no-brainer inclusion. Next up, Steep. This one is definitely more linear than the other two, but I think that gives it a much more of a classic Valve vibe. Instead of heavily dispersing players, everyone's a lot more coalesced together, and that allows for massive team fights everywhere throughout the map. And the tanks forcing the entire team back by necessity is something that you don't see a lot of on other MVM maps. It can sometimes fall into decoy syndrome where everyone's just camping the front, but I think having a more tight map added into a tour provides some much needed variety. And when you get pushed back, almost every pathway being a choke point just resets those team fights ASAP. It doesn't hurt that shoving bots off the hill is the most satisfying environmental kill in the game either. It's the simplest map of the bunch, but I'd love to see this one included with a decently hard mission. Speaking of classic Valve, next up we've got Cliffside. I'm not sure if Valve would ever choose this one because A, it heavily borrows from Coal Town's aesthetic, which will lose it points in the novelty category, and B, it almost feels embarrassing having this one and Coal Town in the same game. Cliffside is just a better map in every single way. They're not even comparable despite having the same coat of paint. The terrain is very interesting, there are a lot of cool places to set up on. Take everything I said about Underground and Control-V it here. After that, we've got Quetzal, an Aztec ruins map that reminds me a lot of a mix between Egypt and Lazarus, mostly in regards to the stone monuments in tandem with the cave torches. It pushes the envelope a bit, but that's not really important. What actually matters is how well the map plays, and Quetzal plays fantastic. The map is open enough to where your whole team can spread out, but close enough to where you can chase down any robots on the layers below you. There's a lot of see-through cover that allows you to track robot travel paths while still remaining safe from damage. The branching paths, multiple layers, and tank breaking through mid in a similar vein to Rottenburg makes this map a lot of fun. Easily one of the best community maps, add this one too. Next up we have Coleco, which is very close to the top of the workshop right now, and I think it is well deserved. This has gotta be one of the single most beautiful maps I've ever played on. I'm a sucker for granary, and Coleco feels like it's attached from the hip. It's a really fun open layout with every section of the map being enjoyable to fight on. It plays a lot more grounded than some of the other missions shown off, but that's in no way a bad thing. Unfortunately, the only mission packed alongside it has 4 waves, an anomaly among both Valve and community-made missions. For that reason, I'm not sure Valve will go for it, but I hope they do. Coleco is fucking fantastic. After that, we've got Hideout, another highly upvoted map, which has been a long-time community staple. You might look look at the front line, see two giant gray holes in the wall, and think that the map would be boring, but I actually find the minimalism really refreshing. Similarly to Steep, it lets more of the attention shift from the actual map itself, and more so towards the mission design encompassing it. The map also has that 2017 Jungle Inferno look going on, similarly to Fulgur, which was added in the last update. Might be worth double dipping here. Finally, we have a bit of a dark horse pick, Rancher. It borrows a lot from the old Buyer aesthetic, which was around during the Invasion update. A very unique setting for an MvM map. Rancher's more recent community missions are genuinely fucking insane and fly way out of the bounds of what would be appropriate for an in-game implementation, but a lot of those are reliant on source mods, so there's no way they make their way into the game. But it is worth noting that Rancher as a map, on its own merits, is genuinely very well designed in both gameplay and visuals. Problem is, I don't know if there are any accompanying missions that can be ported over before Valve starts playtesting. That's why I call it a dark horse pick. But if there is a way to make more of a simple mission work, instead of ones that have fuck you laser beams everywhere, I think it's an attempt worth making. All of these workshop submissions are in the description, so go give them an upvote. Some of these are criminally underrated. Like, we're talking page 8 type underrated. The more attention these maps get, the higher of a chance they have of making their way into the game. Go give them some clicks, they very much deserve it. And if you thought we were stopping there, we're not. Because there are a few honorable mentions that I think are one rung below the bunch. However, these could still make for very cool additions to the game. First up, we've got Waterfront, yet another classic community MvM map that I'm a big fan of personally. However, its more compact design with branching pathways tends to make it more of a love it or hate it kind of map. I'm in the love category personally, but in the name of appealing to the most amount of people, I left it out of the top 8. After that, we have Bogland. This is a more recently created community map that I think is extremely well designed. Good balance of open and closed off areas, with each part of the map being enjoyable to fight on. However, and I'm fully willing to admit this is 100% subjectivity, the marsh setting just doesn't do it for me. Don't get me wrong, it looks very nice on a technical level, but it just doesn't have the same cozy vibes as a lot of other maps. And if I'm gonna be spending 20% of a tour playing on one map, I gotta enjoy hanging out there. This is a purely personal thing though. Objectively, it plays great and is very well made. Flowerfield is a map that currently sits pretty high on the workshop. It's on the smaller side, but the layout is actually very well thought out. Needing to balance both ends of the robot spawns while your team's positioning is what accounts for your overall risk profile. I know a lot of people might not be huge on the more colorful theming of the map, a similar take to my feelings on Bogland, but personally, I don't mind it at all. It's very well made on the gameplay front, and if that's all you're worried about, there's not much to complain about here. And to top it off, despite the original MvM trailer being set in a blizzardy field, there's yet to be one winter map in the game. There are a lot you can pick from, but of the ones I've played, my favorite is Shiver Peak. It really hits home that old school viaduct feel, and I find holding down the fort very fun. My only gripe with Shiver Peak is your line of sight near the front lines is a bit too obscured by the middle rock for my liking. I get that's the purpose of adding it, and it does do its job well as a balancing mechanism, but it doesn't feel good to push into flank fucking range just to get the left side robots in your field of view. Outside of that, it's a very fun map, and one of my personal favorites. There are definitely a lot of other solid maps out there that I haven't talked about, be it due to a lack of experience, lack of applicable workshop application, or too many elements that are overly extravagant for anything beyond a community server. I've given you my favorites, I'll let you all parse them out at your own leisure. But as we all know, updates aren't all about the maps, and especially when we're talking about MvM, there are a lot of changes that can and should be made to the game mode. You might think I'm referring to things like adding new upgrades, nerfing infinite refunds, reworking the gas passer, removing any and all god spots, or reverting air blast push force, but truth be told, I don't see any of those things actually happening. It's either too much work or too much controversy for Valve to want to look in any of those directions. I champion all those changes personally, but they're off the books in my eyes, so I'm not going to be devoting any energy towards them in this video. But you know what might be on the books? Australiums. Yep, we're doing this again. I think it goes without saying that we all want a new batch of golden weapons. The work is already done and would immediately catapult thousands of new players into the MvM grind. It's a no-brainer, but so is Valve nowadays. The Australia models have already been created and put on the workshop. They're ready to go. It's just up in the air as to whether or not Valve will act on it. The specifics are a lot more subjective and vary from person to person, but there are some obvious ones that everyone can agree on. Shotgun, pistol, flare gun, market gardener, robo sandwich, crossbow, kunai. All of these would make for highly championed inclusions. If you want my thoughts on the specifics, I made a whole video on it like 2 years ago. Most of my thoughts have remained the same. It's worth highlighting once again that if Valve are going to throw in new Australiums, they need to be restricted to dropping on the new maps and nothing else. Likewise, the old Australiums need to remain soul-bound to the classic Valve tours. If you intermingle the loot, the potential for one tour to reign supreme while the rest of them beg for player table scraps is an unfortunate guarantee. It's an easily avoidable problem. I just hope Valve sees it too. There's also been some talk about new killstreaker effects. For anyone unaware, those are the fancy little unusual effects you get while using a professional killstreak weapon, scaling in prominence based on your killstreak number. These are tied to the fabricator drops from 2 cities, which have a relatively strong chance of getting ported over to whatever new mission we're getting. I'd be cool with a new batch of these too, as it would help differentiate the new tour from what we already have available, but to me, these aren't high on the priority list. The effects we have right now are already pretty good. It would be nice to see, and I don't think vouching for them is a wasted effort, but I'm not holding my breath. What I do hope for, but also kind of expect, is rolling out a bunch of new bug fixes. Cause goddamn, you don't need me to tell you how buggy MvM has been for literally years. Incorrect robot numbers on the UI, the Manhattan gate capture noise going on in perpetuity, the Rottenberg barrier often being invisible for the entire game, vote kicks not auto-banning you from a lobby like they do in casual, missions breaking randomly in the middle of a game, the second tick of heavy firing speed not working, the third tick of sentry firing speed not working while the second one is conditional on other factors, burn time being defunct ever since Jungle Inferno, ghost upgrades depending on the weapon, and those are just the ones I remember off the dome. I'd expect at least a few of these to be knocked off the list come update time. Oh, and speaking of upgrades, I figure we also add in some damage upgrades for weapon types that don't already have them. Right now, there's no way to increase the base damage of shotguns, pistols, revolvers, or flare guns at the upgrade station. I think giving them this option is completely fine, warranted even. There's no universe where this obscures the meta of even a single class in the game. All it does is improve the viability of some more niche, off-meta builds that people like fooling around with. Nothing wrong with that in my view. I think it's about time. I'd also think it'd be a good time to give Spy some kind of buff to make him more accessible to new players. Spy is the only class in the game you'll almost never seen played by over 95% of the player base outside of niche counterpick waves. And even then, that's relatively rare. My suggestion, give him a money magnet. It doesn't have to be as good as scouts or anything, but this at the very least would give Spy something to do during the small bot downtime where he's pretty feckless compared to every other class. Plus, this would make him more tanky when going in on giants, decreasing his risk and improving his overall viability. Hardcore MvM players will complain that this makes Spy overpowered, but newsflash, every class is overpowered. Spy just takes a lot more effort to get him there. Plus, you still ain't doing much to the small robots or tanks. I think making his giant shredding even more safe is completely fair when you're not pulling your weight against over half of the threats that encompass a wave. Additionally, that 2021 inspec change, man, that shit needs to go. Being unable to check your teammates' upgrades during a period in the game's history where missions will be swamped with low-tour Larrys who have never touched man-up in their life, I get a headache just thinking about it. Veteran players are cool with helping out, but not if they have to go through a whole-ass Mass Effect dialogue tree for every player on the team to hopefully get things in order. It's not even a guarantee. Anyone who doesn't want to be a special ed teacher is just gonna dip out frame 1, and I don't think that's an environment worth continuing going into a new content patch. Will this change spark some toxicity? Yes. But remember, removing upgrade inspection never removed toxicity to begin with. It just delayed it. Kick down the road until Wave 2 or beyond. Revert this dogshit patch. You'll see people sticking around to help out way more. There are also some massive issues relating to MvM queue times that have persisted for almost a year now. I'd address it here, but I got a whole video coming out on it very soon. The problem runs a lot deeper than most people think. Other than that, I think that's it. If Valve does even half of what I've mentioned in this video today, the update is destined to be a hit. Everything I've talked about here can be easily implemented into the game. I just want them to follow through on at least some of it, despite Valve's modern reluctance to put in that much effort nowadays. Again, go check the description of this video to check out the wonderful workshop submissions that we discussed earlier. They really deserve more attention. And with that, I'll be back very soon. Thank you all for watching the video. So Twitter, Discord, second channel, and Twitch are all in the description. And that's all I got. See ya.